and that they're getting paid legal wages and not being forced to work illegally long hours. That's why all these cases are happening, because the enforcement link is totally missing. So under Chinese law, citizens since 1989 have been able to sue government agencies on this ground. And it works a treat. Boy. We had a case last year, earlier this year, of over 100 migrant workers from the countryside in Hunan who had been construction workers. They had built Shenzhen over the last 20 years. And they were involved in the dynamiting for putting in the foundations of these buildings. Absolutely no protection against dust, silica dust, just incredible amounts of it. Local government had not been going around inspecting and certifying the construction sites as safe, nothing like that. So many years later, they start developing silicosis. Many of them are dying. You know, villages, whole large numbers of workers in these villages are dying. It's a fatal illness. Last year, 100 of them came back to Shenzhen and began petitioning, standing outside the government office day after day, demanding compensation, demanding the government help them get compensation from their former employers. The government officer said, well, okay, prove that you're employed by this company. Where's your labour contract? You know? Of course, they didn't have them. Why didn't they have them? Because the Labour Inspectorate had not been going around checking that employers were giving them 20 years ago. So it's a catch-22 situation. You don't have proof of employment, so get lost. That was the message. It doesn't matter if you're dying. No, it can't help you. So we got in touch with the workers, and Han Dongfang, our founder and director, said, look, here's what you should do. We'll help you. We'll prepare a legal brief. We'll get you lawyers. We'll pay for it. Sue these people and wake them up. The workers said, you bet. You know, so we sent them the legal brief. They looked at it. I mean, a lot of these workers in stage 3 silicosis, they have oxygen bags. They can't walk 10 yards without, you know, having to sit down. Their lungs aren't working. And they said, yes, you know, we have children, we have families, we're probably going to die in a few years. We have to provide for them. We'll do whatever it takes. And the next day, they took the legal brief that Han Dongfang had prepared for them. They took it to the government and said, okay, you say you can't help us. We're here to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to sue you. And boy, things changed overnight. The government, from being totally unhelpful and dismissive, sent out dozens of inspectors to all those companies that had employed these workers, trying to find evidence of labour that they'd been working there for the workers so they could help them. Next thing is the government from Leiyang, where they came from in Hunan, said, this is terrible. All these workers should get 120,000 yuan each. That's about 15,000 US dollars. You know, from zero to that, goes a long way to looking after your family after you're gone. But of course, it wasn't that government that had to pay the bill. It was the Shenzhen government. They had other ideas. No, we think that's far too high. Let's 30,000 be about right. The worst, of course not. You know, that's derisory. So we're still going to sue you. And they insisted and persisted in their struggle. Net result, after a couple of weeks, all of the workers, Shenzhen government gives them between 180,000 and 280,000 yuan. Make the problem go away. But one of the workers said, I'm still going to bring that administrative lawsuit. I want to make the point. And amazingly, the court accepted it, this case alleging government neglect and non-feasance of its legal duties to monitor labour standards. The local labour department, the health department, and a range of other local departments in Shenzhen sent dozens of their officials to audit that trial. And the message they've been given is, go watch, learn, make sure this never happens again. What do we need to do to stop this kind of thing happening? So it has a very big demonstration effect. Now, But cases are doing cases are one thing, but as I said, even these impact litigation type approaches are still far from enough. That led us at CLB in 2005 into starting a new project, collective bargaining. The labour rights litigation only addressed the symptoms, and it only addressed the problem after the labour violations had happened. It's a band-aid, a necessary one, but still a band-aid. Thought we've got to go for the root of this problem. What is the root of the problem? It's that there is no healthy labour relations system in China. If workers were allowed to negotiate with employers on a free and equal basis, they would set up systems. They would identify health and safety hazards. They would be included in the collective bargaining agreement, proper health and safety provision. If limbs are being lost, that would be an obvious issue. Change the equipment, you know, upgrade the machinery, put in place safeguards. All that would be in the contract. It would also, of course, mean that workers could monitor labour standards 7/24. Unlike companies that fly in a social auditor once or twice a year and gets the runaround from the manager, and the real facts don't come to light. This wouldn't happen if workers were there, organised, elected representatives, with a mandate from the workforce to negotiate and deal with all these issues with management. So we started this project. Everyone thought it was ludicrous in 2005. How can you know, this is impossible. China will never have collective bargaining. But Han Dongfang said, okay, it's impossible, but you know what, it's necessary. It's necessary, it's the only way forward. The government will eventually realise that. So we're going to do it anyway. So we set up, through partner groups in various parts of the country, very good partner groups, workers' rights NGOs, labour lawyers, and others. We set up this project. We have collective bargaining training teams in place in various places that intervene in labour disputes and strikes. They will intervene, go to find out who is leading the strike, discuss with them, give them legal advice, help them to get the workers' struggle onto a safer track. If it's a street protest, we'll say, look, you should be calling for negotiations. You've got united worker strength behind you. Instead of just making a noise, let's really focus the demands, rank them in order of importance, and call to get to the negotiating table. And we've had a lot of success with this. I'm going to give you one example. In 2007, this was a dramatic case. The main seaport in Shenzhen is called Yantian Port. It's enormous. It's wholly owned by Li Ka-shing, who is one of the squillionaires in Hong Kong. One of the wealthiest people, 3 wealthiest people in Hong Kong. This is a wholly owned foreign venture, amazingly. It's one of China's biggest ports. In late 2007, 4,000 crane operators suddenly went on strike because they're getting paid very low wages, excessively long hours. And this paralyzed the port for days. I mean, it was a huge problem for the government. Now, at that point, one of our partners, who's very good at this kind of thing, got in touch with the workers and went in and said, look, you need to organize, you need to have an agenda for negotiations, collective bargaining, you need to elect your negotiating representatives. You know, we need to really focus here. And they gave legal support. The workers really need this. You know, they're afraid, look, if we do this, we would be breaking the law. You know, how can we do this in a legal way? And so our partner was able to give that kind of advice, help them elect their own representatives who had legitimacy, work out a bargaining strategy. At this point, the official trade union came in, sent in by the government with a mandate to fix the problem. You know, just go in there, fix it. if it means forcing the workers back to the production line, whatever it takes, you're our union. You know, that's what we pay you for. Go and do it. Now, they went in and offered to help, but the workers said, no, we don't want you. Basically, they didn't trust them. And instead, they persisted in their strike, and they arranged their own union. Now, this may sound, what I said earlier, like, isn't this illegal? But no, as long as workers have the right, if there is no union in their workplace already, they can organize themselves and set up a union. But it then has to affiliate with the official union. Then it's legal. Now, that's fine. We ourselves have had a lot of experience in doing that at grassroots level. In this case, again, the government accepted the new union. Li Ka-shing and his managers were forced to the negotiating table. Result, a collective bargaining agreement, freely negotiated, one of the first in China, if not the first, genuinely freely negotiated CBA. And that union still exists, it's monitoring this, it's been a major achievement. Now, I'm running over time. I'm sorry, if I just quickly try to say something useful about the, or at least begin what I'm sure will be a lively discussion on where CSR comes in here to this whole picture. Well, I think first of all, it's really vital to recognize that CSR has made a major contribution in China over the last 20 years. I mean, I remember in 1990, just after Tiananmen Square, when I was at Human Rights Watch, we drafted what I think was the first draft code of ethical conduct for businesses operating in China. Many companies were disinvesting, moving out at that time. The ones that remained, which was the majority, we thought, okay, that's fine, business is good for China, it's helping to develop the economy. We didn't call for a boycott or anything like that. But, you know, businesses should use their influence for the good in terms of safeguarding minimum human rights and labour rights standards. So we came up with this ethical code of conduct, and we shopped it around the boardrooms in New York. I remember going to the GEE offices and the board sitting there. They listened to us politely, but with sort of bemusement, and then it was, well, thank you, you know, fascinating. When's my next meeting? You know, and nothing happened. Nobody signed up on it. Now, you know, 20 years later, it's a huge industry. CSR is, it's a hegemonic idea, isn't it? In fact, it may be, has gone too far. Many groups like ours would say, yes, it's played a major positive role, but must be very careful. Companies and NGOs involvement, I think, need to be very careful in a place like China, where there is no freedom of organization for workers. There is no genuine labour movement. There's no established labour movement as such that can represent workers. I think companies need to be very careful that they don't intrude on what is, properly speaking, union territory. So here we have a little bit of a paradox or a problem that, especially as we move into talking about the issues that ETI Norway have very effectively highlighted and are so important, which is we have to go beyond social auditing. And the key thing is, what is the next step? The next step has to be to actually give the main role to Chinese workers here. CSR, if it's reduced to a dialogue between the buyer and the supplier, and workers are on the sidelines as the, you know, passive observers, is not going to work. And it can turn out to be disadvantageous to the rights of the workers. So they have to be put in centre stage. But how is this to be done? Especially when, as I say, companies need to avoid intruding on union territory. I mean, you know, since when have companies, let's face it, been at the forefront of bringing labour rights anywhere? This is not how it happens. It's not their proper job. You know, this is not a criticism of companies, it's just stating a fact. Workers need their own representatives. So how do we manage that one? I think this will be a very